Right. Welcome, everyone. It is now 10:01, so we'll go ahead and get started. Before we start, I just want to make clear, this call, this is not a coaching call or anything like that. This call is just to answer questions about anything about the training or my course that I have. So if you have any questions regarding that, then you're in the right place. If you happen to be a student of the course already, what I would recommend you do is log off and actually spend this time either going through the course or, most importantly, implementing what you've learned in the course. Because, like I said, this is not a coaching call. This is simply to answer questions for those that have questions about the course, or maybe general questions about the overage business in general. We're not going to be doing any how-to training or anything like that in this call. So I just want to make sure that that is clear and that everyone understands that, and that if you are a student, you should probably log off, and you would be better served to go out and implement what you've learned from the program. Okay, make sense? So that being said, I will just open it up. Feel free to unmute yourself, ask any questions you have about the training or about the overage business in general. Or if you don't feel comfortable unmuting yourself, go ahead and type your questions in the chat, whatever you feel good about, and I will open it up. So this time is now yours to ask any questions you have about the program or maybe just the overage business in general. So fire away.
Hi, Nick, I have a question.
Perfect, go for it.
In the beginning, it seems like there's going to be some trial and error going on in finding the right lawyer, conscientious lawyer who knows what they're doing to help us file claims.
Yep.
What are a couple of necessary questions we need to ask the lawyers as we're kind of interviewing them to make sure we're engaging the right lawyer to help us do this?
The biggest thing is to make sure that they are familiar with surplus funds and excess proceeds. And one thing that we like to do is, in section 5, we actually go over, there's actually a script that you can use for when you're actually talking to the attorneys, and that will help guide you in your conversation with the attorney. And then, of course, there's about 3 different modules going over, okay, how do we find the attorney? Where are we going to look for the attorney? What are we going to say to the attorney? So that is all covered in section 5 of the course.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Other questions, guys? If you have questions about the course, about the business in general, go ahead, unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
I have another question if no one's going to ask.
Yeah, if no one's going to take the opportunity, go for it.
So realistically, in the beginning, if we're putting in the time as if it's a full-time job, and we're doing the work and we're following every step as outlined in the course, realistically, after how many conversations do you think it's fair to expect the first deal to close? Like after we've spoken to how many people, how many conversations?
That's a great question. I would, based on my experience, and because I don't come from a sales background or anything, so I'm not super fancy on the phone or very skilled, but what I found is if I talk to 10 to 20 people, so if I have 10 to 20 conversations, I should get 1 to 2 deals from those conversations. So great question. And so I would also say that that can remain constant for a lot of folks, is like, if you're talking, if you have 10 to 20 conversations with people that are owed money, you should get at least 1 to 2 deals from those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think those 10 to 20 conversations are all related to the same property, or those are 10 to 20 conversations across different relatives and different properties to close one deal?
Really good question. Yeah, so That is, so when I say conversations, I guess I'll clarify what I mean by that. When I say conversations, I mean you're actually talking to the person that is owed the money from the property foreclosure or tax sale. Now, here's the caveat to that, right? It may take you 5 or 10 conversations to get to that person. So 10 to 20 conversations with the person owed the money, not counting any conversations you had to actually make contact. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Really good. Yeah, I'm glad you had me clarify that. Bata, what type of paper documents do I have to use? Can you send the form by my email? So Bata, right here in, so you may have joined late. If any of you guys joined late, if you happen to be a student, log off and use this time to go and actually go through the course and implement what you learned. We're just going over questions about the course and the business in general. Bare minimum though, Bata, you need to have a fee agreement. You need to have a fee agreement signed between you and the person that's owed the funds. There's an example of a fee agreement that you can download in section 5 of the program, as well as other forms that you may need, such as assignment forms, limited powers of attorneys. There's a retainer agreement you can use with attorneys, affidavits of heirship. That's when you are working with people that are heirs to a deceased homeowner that's owed money. Okay. So there are examples of multiple different forms that you may need that you can download in section 5 of the course. All right. Who else has got questions? Anna, would you suggest that we get an LLC or DBA business email to start the business, or even a website? In Texas, it's $300 to get an LLC. Great question, Anna. So I'll share with you what I did. When I first started out, I didn't have an LLC. It was just, I just signed my personal name on the fee agreement. And I did that for like the first 2 deals that I did. After that, I was like, okay, let's get an LLC. Let's make this legit. So you don't have to get an LLC in the beginning. However, it does help. If I had to choose between the two, whether you get an LLC or a website, I would recommend getting a website first, because folks may look you up after you talked with them, or if they receive a letter from you. And so having a website definitely helps. Whereas, you know, if you send a letter to someone and, you know, they do their due diligence and they can't find anything on you, that could raise a red flag for them. So if you have to make a decision between, you know, do I get a website or do I get an LLC? I would recommend getting a website first, LLC second, or you can get them both simultaneously. It just depends on your situation. And then if you need, you know, there is a, in section 6 of the program, there's this module on how to build credibility and trust. And there is a referral there that can help you, that can actually build a website for you if you're interested. I think it does cost a couple $100 or something like that. So, or you could build your own. There's lots of services out there that you can build your own websites for less than $100, and so it's very reasonable. And they have a lot of good trainings. You know, YouTube, you can figure out how to build your own website very quickly. So hope that helps. But I would website first, LLC second. It's good to have both though. If you're serious about the business, you'll get both eventually. So. Don, regarding competition, how often do you end up competing with another company versus no contact and the deal is 100% yours? Great question, Don. So it depends really on the state. So a lot of people ask, what's the best state to start in? And the reality is there is no best state. It's just what problems you want to solve. And what I mean by that is there are states that are very easy to get leads, very easy to get research done, very easy to find out who's owed money. Florida is a great example of that. Florida is very easy to get leads, and there's a lot of leads. But that creates a problem. A low barrier of entry creates a large amount of competition. So if I'm doing anything in Florida, I pretty much know that someone else is going to be reaching out to that person, just because the barrier of entry is so low and it's so easy to get leads and research folks. Now, if I'm working a state where it's very hard to get the information, it's very hard to get the leads, I'll use New York as an example. Tough state. It's, we discovered leads in a place that I would have never thought to look. And what we found is when we were reaching out to people, no one else had contacted them in certain areas of New York. And so, but that's because the barrier of entry was very high to figure out who's owed money in New York. So to answer your question, it depends on the state. As a general rule of thumb, the easier it is to get lists, the easier it is to find out who's owed money, the more people you're going to run into. The harder it is to get lists, the harder it is to get your leads, the less people you're going to run into, if any. So I hope that helps answer the question.
Hi, Nick. So in the course, we're given all the paperwork we need by state, right?
It is not by state. It's just general paperwork. So really good question. Now I will say the fee agreement I use across all 50 states. The only time I don't use it is if I'm working California mortgage overages. And in that instance, there are a few state specific forms. And I think there is so here's a California mortgage overage section. And I think that is, let me just make sure. I want to make sure that it's included in there. Yep. Okay. So with some of these one-off states like California, it is the paperwork for California mortgage overages is included, and that is state specific. So,
But I mean, a follow-up is that, and then it's up to us to find county specific paperwork in addition to the state required paperwork.
that's actually, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Are we like Googling, say, XYZ county mortgage overage paperwork per claim? Is that what we're Googling when we're finding our own county specific papers?
No, I mean, that is one of the main reasons that I teach using an attorney, is because if you use an attorney, they're the ones that are going to be doing your paperwork for you, because they will be familiar with what paperwork is needed. And so at the bare minimum, guys, if you ever have, like, if you're unsure of what to get signed, like you're just starting out, just get a fee agreement signed initially. And then once you have that fee agreement signed, well, now you can go to attorney. You can say, hey, look, I've got business for you right now. And they're going to be more motivated to work with you. And if they need anything else, they'll say, hey, we need this. Or some attorneys, they actually prefer to, send the client their paperwork if they require their own. It just depends on the attorney. But that is one reason why it's so important to work with attorneys, guys, is because then you're not spending so much time trying to figure out what is it I need to file and how do I fill this out correctly. Better to spend your time talking to people and have an attorney handle all of that than to be doing it yourself. I'll be honest with you guys. There's only like 2 places that I don't use attorneys. And that is, well, 2. There's 2. California tax sale overages. And the reason I don't is because all the counties have their paperwork online. So you can go to the county and download it. And Nevada tax sale overages, which is basically the exact same as California. Everywhere else, I'm going to have an attorney work through an attorney. So Batsu, I've probably butchered your name. I apologize. Batsu. Mr. Barker? I don't know. Great question. How can you find leads and phone numbers? So that is a process known as skip tracing. And we cover that in depth in section 2 of the course is, how do you skip tracing 101? How do you find people? Then we go over advanced skip tracing techniques. I go over what is called my 3 levels deep exercise. We talk about how do you skip trace a business, all that good stuff. And then we also talk about how do you perform debt research on the property so that you know that there's no superior claims or someone else is owed the money, that you know exactly who you need to contact based on the title and who's entitled to the funds. So that is covered as far as finding people. That's all covered in section 2 of the program. Don, so would working mortgage overage be more difficult to find, be the best approach? It depends. I mean, Don, if the problem that you don't want to face is dealing with competition, then the problem you're going to have to solve is finding leads. And yes, mortgage overages are usually tougher to find as far as leads go than tax sale overages, because there's usually not lists of mortgage overages. There's a couple states that have lists, like Arizona has a list of mortgage overages. New Jersey has a list of mortgage overages. But other than those 2 states, you're going to be having to build your own lists of mortgage overages. And that can be difficult. But because it provides a barrier of entry, then that means less people do it. I do both. I do tax and mortgage, but I will say that we do most of my business is mortgage, but we still do tax.
So is it fair to say every state except for those 2 that you mentioned would, require more effort, therefore less competition?
For sure. Yep, for sure. And even Arizona, surprisingly enough, I know there's like 2 big companies in Arizona, and that's really the only folks that I know of that are really, going after Arizona. And I mean, even they don't get all of the leads. I mean, there's plenty of work to do in Arizona. I think I've shared their list before, but it's constantly being updated. I mean, you guys can go. Arizona is not a huge state. There's 3 counties that you would focus on, which is Maricopa County, Pima County, and I think Pinal County, which is, you've got Phoenix, Tucson, and I can't remember the other one. But if you just type in Maricopa County excess proceeds list, you'll find the list. Looks like this. Let me share my screen real quick. See if it pops up here. And so what I was saying is, there's like 2 pretty big companies that focus on the deals there. But I mean, this is just Maricopa County. This 3rd column is what's available to claim. Okay. So this column right here, next to the case number, like this one where it says case balance and it had an amount received, somebody claimed this, whether it was the homeowner, whether it was a company, somebody claimed it, something happened, the money's gone. But there's still a lot of funds that, are available to claim. And so this is what I've learned with competition, guys. Competition is a good thing because it tells you, it's a sign that the business actually works in that area. And number 2 is if there's multiple people doing it, then that means multiple people are having success. So why can't you have success as well? Great question, Batsuk. Yes, it is. I definitely recommend when you're just starting out, guys, stick to one state, one area, whether it's one state and a few counties, or if it's a very large county, you may be able to stick to that one county. And the reason behind that is once you go through the entire process of learning a state, learning how to, know about their procedures and how it works. Once you've gone through that once, then you can go and start learning about other states. But here's the problem. The last thing you want to do is say, okay, I'm going to start in I'm just going to throw out some names. I'm going to start in California, Georgia, and Texas because they're the biggest populous, most populated states. If you're doing those 3 states simultaneously, you're not going to make any significant progress in any one because you're going to be stuck learning one process, then going to another state, learning their process, and you're not making any significant progress. Whereas if you focus on one, learn it, get some deals done, now you've gone through the entire process a few times, then you can duplicate that for another state. But just understand, when you start in a new state, you're starting from scratch. You're starting over. So I highly recommend you pick one, stick with it, do a couple deals. Once you've done a couple deals, then look to expanding your operation.
Let's say you found the owner's right numbers. What do you think is a sweet spot in the days interval between contacting them once and then the second time and the third time? Like, what's a sweet spot without being overbearing, but nice, pleasantly persistent?
Yeah, absolutely. Once in the morning for sure. Like if you can reach out between 9 and 11 or 9 and noon. And then once in the evening, after 4, after 5 p.m. Those morning times and evening times seem to be the best spots to get a hold of folks.
And try that every other day to try to reach the same person if they don't call back.
Yeah, I would say, if I'm reaching out to someone, I'll call them, leave a voicemail, give them a couple days to reach back out to you before you try to contact them again.
Mhm.
So I like to give them 24 to 48 hours to respond. If not, we can come back around.
Yeah. Would you say that's the biggest thing between people who are successful in this versus people who are not? Those who are just pleasantly persistent versus people who just fall off after making a couple calls?
100%. Yeah, it's the consistency in reaching out to people that are owed funds and having those conversations. That is the biggest differentiator between, my successful students and my students that aren't seen as, great a success as they could. Is a lot of folks they'll get really good at maybe creating the leads, step 1. And then they'll also get really good at maybe, researching and skip tracing people. But this step 3, like this is what's funny, right? Notice how step 3 is the shortest module in the entire course.
Yeah.
It's probably the most simple. It is the most important step in the entire process. And this is where people they fall off the wagon, whether it's fear of talking to people, fear of rejection, or they just, they're not consistent. Maybe one day they call a bunch of people and then they go 2 weeks without making a single call or reaching out to anyone, So the consistency in generating those conversations, that is what separates those that see success from those that don't.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anna, so if you live in Texas, I heard that if I live in Texas, I cannot do business in my own state. Is that true? That is not true, Anna. You just have to make sure make sure you use an attorney. That's the only way to do it in Texas. Don't be trying to do it on your own in Texas. Just use an attorney. You will avoid so many problems. And, yes, you can do this business in Texas if you live there. My attorney does this business in Texas and she lives there. So yeah, I'm not aware of any laws or anything like that that say you can't do this business if you live there. So I would say that's not true unless there's a law that says it. I'd be very surprised if there was. I've got students who live in Texas that are doing deals, so you can absolutely do it there. Great question, Don. Why do prospective claimants not want to proceed after initial contact? Great question. Biggest thing, they think it's a scam. They think it's not real. And so it's very important that we educate folks when we're contacting them about, where this money is coming from and how it all works, and that there's no risk to them because we don't charge anything up front. Okay. That's one of the biggest reasons. Another reason is maybe they are a do-it-yourselfer, or maybe they have a family attorney. They may want to have their attorney do it for them, or maybe they're, you do have some folks that maybe have owned property. I've seen this, like if we're dealing with someone that's ever dealt with the court system, and you can find this out very quickly just by searching their name, in the court records. If you put their name in the court records, and they've got like eviction cases and, things outside of foreclosure, and they've dealt with the courts on their own, they may want to try it on their own and submit a claim on their own. So that's if you've got someone that's just very savvy with how the court system works, which is not most people. That's a very small percentage. So those are the two biggest ones, is either they don't believe it's real, or they want to try it themselves, or they have an attorney in the family. A third reason I would say is they may have some sort of fear. And it's your job to understand what that fear is. And what I mean by that is some of them may have a fear of, well, if I get this money, do I have to pay it back? If I went through a bankruptcy, do I have to pay this back? Do I have to pay taxes on this money? All that good stuff. So it's very important just to figure out what their objections are, so that then you can help educate them to overcome them. Aileen, yes, a Texas can cover my attorney in Texas covers the entire state. So yes, that's usually how it works. I've usually got one attorney per state. I usually don't have multiple attorneys in one state. Usually one is sufficient to cover the entire. The nice thing too, I guess this is a good thing about COVID, is a lot of courts have gone online, meaning they're doing their hearings online via Zoom and WebEx and all that. So some of these attorneys aren't even having to go to the court anymore to get their stuff done, which is kind of nice for us and nice for the attorney.
Nick, why do you think some of the really successful students in the public group, the one that all of us have access to right now, not the private group, they're resistant to sharing lawyer referrals, lawyers that have worked out really well for them? Because to me, it's not taking away anyone's business, and better for the lawyer to get more business from new students. And all the credit goes to the former students who have been successful working with that lawyer. I don't know why they're so resistant to sharing referrals. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because when you get in the business and you start to look for that first attorney, you realize how difficult it is to find that good attorney. And it's a lot of work. And so just hand that over to someone without them going through the process, I guess maybe they think it's cheating in somehow. I'll tell you why I don't do it, except for my super high level students in my gold program. I had a case in California. And this attorney that I was using, she was recommended through, a program. And so I used this attorney, and we were working a case that was like a $96,000 overage. And I don't know if she just thought that I was a newbie because I had come through this program, because I wasn't a newbie. I had done several deals. So I knew what I was doing, but I think she lumped me into that newbie pool. And she told me that there was no money available, that the court told her there's no overage. Well, I knew better because I knew what I was doing. And I was like, no, you're wrong. There is money. Well, she wouldn't follow through because she thought that I was an idiot, I guess. I don't know. I don't know why she didn't, because she thought I was a newbie, I guess. So I went and found my own attorney anyway. And lo and behold, there was $96,000 in the courthouse. That attorney would have costed me 20 grand in profit if I had just listened to her and said, oh, well, she says there's no overage. And so because of that experience, that's one reason I don't like have a list of attorneys in my course, is because the last thing I want to do is have the attorney receive a bunch of inquiries from folks that may not have a deal yet and be answering questions, and then look at me as like, oh, Nick's referring all of these people that don't even have deals. Therefore, I'm not going to put any importance on Nick's deals. And that's just my experience. That's why I don't do that. Because once you find that attorney, it can be, it's just tough to find a really good one. And then when they start becoming overloaded with cases, and maybe not very good cases, that affects your business in a negative way. At least that was my experience with that California deal. It really, it freaked me out. Like, I was like, holy cow, if I had been a newbie and I didn't know what I was doing, I would have lost almost 20 grand.
Yeah.
So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
Bonaparte, yes. Okay, so you joined another program. That's cool. I would like to practice cold calling. Could I use your company name to do so? No, you cannot. Absolutely not. Yeah, please don't use my company name, even if it's in a practice scenario. Just come up with your own company name. And if you need someone to practice cold calling, make sure you're in the free Facebook group, and I'm sure you'd find several individuals that would love to hop on the phone with you, and you could practice with each other. So if you're not part of that group, it's just overages, excess proceeds, surplus funds, how to profit. Just type that in the Facebook search bar, and you can find a ton of people to practice with. But no, please don't use my name or my company name. Just come up with your own. Good question, though. Do you need an attorney in the state you're doing business in? I would highly recommend it, Roberto. Absolutely, yes. Yes, Don, an attorney can handle a whole state. How do we avoid working a bad state or county when starting? So I guess I would have to ask Don, what's your definition of a bad state? Personally, I don't think there is a bad state. Here's my definition of like a place that I would be interested in doing business in. If there's money available to help people claim, then that's a good place to work, which basically means the entire US. Now, there's going to be some states that are less, some of your lower population states may not have a ton of overages, like up in the Northeast, Vermont, New Hampshire. I have no idea if there's overages there. I've never looked into it because the population is so small. But yeah, there's no such thing as a bad state, I guess. Again, I'd need a definition of what is bad. What does bad mean? So
Does the fee agreement have to be notarized? And what's your gold program?
So the fee agreement, it doesn't always need to be notarized, but it doesn't hurt if it is. And it's, some of my students love to get it notarized, and that's totally cool. But it doesn't always have to be. It does provide an extra level of security, and if it gets notarized, you can have some more comfort that, okay, this is the correct person, right? Because they're verifying their identification. Another thing you could do is, if you don't want them to get it notarized, but you want to make sure they're the right person, have them sign the fee agreement, and then just have them take a picture of their photo ID. That's another good way to do it. Second, the gold program. I will just let me put a link in the chat. There's a video on my YouTube channel that goes over it. And I'll just that video will do a better job explaining it than going through the whole thing right now. So let me find that. Okay. Oh, let's see, everyone. So there should be a YouTube link in the chat. I just copy that and paste it to your browser. That'll cover it. It's kind of a long video. I apologize. It's like a 20-minute video explaining in depth the gold program.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I was just thinking that if a fee agreement should be or must be notarized, it adds that extra hurdle that maybe a lot of claimants don't want to jump over, because then they have to arrange to see a notary.
Yeah.
It's an extra step.
Yep.
You know, I'd have to prepay the notary if
Yeah.
the claimant shows up at all. So it's just, I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Usually it all depends on where I'm working, but most of the time I actually don't have the fee agreement signed. But if I'm working with like heirs, they'll probably get something notarized, like an affidavit of heirship. If I'm working with money that's being held in the court system, and I may use what's called an assignment form, that form usually will get notarized. But I can tell you, most of the time my fee agreement's not notarized. Sometimes it can be digitally signed using DocuSign or something like that. So great question though. All right. Cool, guys. I think we had this scheduled to go to 10:30. So I'll take just maybe one or two more questions and then we will sign off for the day if that works, unless there is no more questions. What would you say is a reasonable amount to work a probate case on toes or mows? That's a great question, Aileen. Ultimately, you have to decide what is worth your time. So like for me, when I first started out, I was like, okay, if I'm going to pursue a case, I want to net at least $4,000. That was my number. Now, there's been times where I've netted less than that, but the work was fairly straightforward, very simple. And there's times where like, you'll find sometimes, guys, that there'll be ups and downs in your lead generation. Sometimes you'll have a ton of leads to work, and then sometimes you won't have a ton of new leads. And during those times, I'd actually go back and work older cases and smaller amounts. And, maybe I'd pick up a deal here and there that was maybe 2,000 or 3,000. Just because I had that extra time to go back and go through the old leads. And so ultimately, I quit focusing on overage amount, and I just am focused on how much am I going to make if all goes well on this deal. And so if now it's kind of more like, now it's like, okay, now I want to make at least 5 or 6. I mean, I'll still take 4 or 3. Don't get me wrong. It's nothing to sneeze at, but I'm just at a point now where I'm trying to focus more of my time on those, higher reward deals. So that's my number, is like that 5 to 6 as a bare minimum that I profit. So when you look at it that way, it allows you to do more deals. Because like, for example, I could do, if there's a probate case and it's, only $20,000, but I negotiate a 60-40 split. Okay. So then my profit on that would be 40% of 20, which is 8,000. And let's say my attorney cost me, I don't know, $2,000. 8 minus 2, 6,000. So that would work. That would fit my parameters. So it just depends on what you want to take home at the end of the day for your work. And that's a personal decision. I will say you'll learn a lot working probate cases, and a lot of people shy away from probate cases. Like there's some folks out there that I know there's other programs, right, guys? They're all good. Some programs will also partner with you like I do, but they want to only do cases where they're direct with the homeowner. They won't do probate cases or estate cases. So because of that, there's lots of opportunity with estate cases. So it's good to work those because there's opportunity in those. But ultimately you have to decide, well, how much do I want to make? And can I make that if I pursue this probate case? So good question, Don. To start, regarding attorney's fees, that depends on you and your situation. I can tell you that usually hourly is the cheapest way to go, because on a straightforward case, it shouldn't take the attorney more than 4 to 6 hours. Okay. So if you've got the funds to pay upfront, or just, set a limit, say, hey, I'll pay you 4 hours of work upfront, that's probably the cheapest way to go. If you don't have money for attorneys, and this is actually good, guys, because this is a worry that a lot of folks have getting into the business, especially because I'm very adamant about working with attorneys. The objection is, well, I don't have money for attorneys. That's okay. You can work out what's called a contingency agreement with the attorney, meaning you don't pay them anything up front. They get paid when the deal pays out. And so in that scenario, you don't have to have any money for attorneys, because the attorney is going to get paid when you get paid. And that is, if you need that, use that to your advantage and work something out with your attorney. The downside to having a contingency agreement is you will pay more. An example is like my Maryland attorney. She's very smart. I've asked her, can I pay your attorney's fees? Because I know deep down she's probably spending 4 to 6 hours per case. And I think she charges $350 an hour. So we're talking $1,500. Well, she charges 10% of the overage amount. So if we recover $30,000, she's taking home $3,000. So she's doubling her profit, right? Just because she's willing to wait for the money, and she's willing. Now she's taking a risk too, because sometimes, if for whatever reason a deal doesn't pay out, well, then she's lost out her time, but that's the trade-off. But if you don't, bottom line, guys, if you don't have funds for attorney, that's not an excuse to get involved, because you can work out a contingency agreement with the attorney. So Anna, if that's your worry, like I can tell you, my Texas attorney works on contingency. I don't pay my attorney up front in Texas. She works on contingency. So there's 3 ways you can pay attorneys, guys. There's the hourly rate, there's a flat rate, and then there's a contingency, meaning percentage of the deal. Flat rate is also great, and you can combine all of those 3 methods. What I mean is, you can negotiate a flat rate, but it can also be contingent on the actual recovery, meaning they'll take out their flat rate when they get the funds. Or you may negotiate, hey, I'll pay you 4 hours worth of work, but maybe they'll take out that money, that 4 hours. Maybe they'll take it out when the surplus. You just got to be creative and see if they're willing to do that. So to go back to your question, Don, which is best, depends on your situation. Hourly flat rate's usually the cheapest. Contingency, the pro is you don't need money out of pocket, but you give up a percentage of the deal in return. That's the con. Batsu, again, section 5 is where you can figure out, how to find attorneys. We cover that in depth. Foreclosure attorneys are really good. And if you can't find any good foreclosure attorneys, bankruptcy attorneys are also good as well, because they're familiar with the foreclosure process.
When an attorney is involved, does the county send the overage check to the attorney, but made out to you? And then you make a separate check out to the attorney and send the rest to the claimant?
Great question. So it depends on the county, depends on the state. There's 2 ways that it's going to go down. Maybe 3. Number 1 is they may send the check to the attorney and it'll be in your name. And so in that case, they'll forward the check to you, you cash it. If you still owe them money, if you didn't pay them up front, like a flat rate up front, then yes, you would have to pay your attorney and then pay your claimant. The second way is, let's say the attorney office gets the check and it's either made out to them or it's made out to the client. The attorney will then deposit that check into their trust account and they will disperse the funds according to your agreement. So they'll take whatever's owed to them, the attorney, they'll send the client their portion, and then they'll send you your portion. I actually love that, because then I don't have to worry about sending out different checks to different people. And so that's another way. Those are the 2 most common ways. Either they send the check made out to you, or they send the check made out to the client or the attorney, and the attorney deposits it and disperses it accordingly. All right. Awesome, guys. Any last call for questions? Any last minute questions? Do you ever get?
If the check is sent and made out to the claimant, how do we know? Will we know that the check has been sent and mailed to the claimant so that we can follow up on them and say, hey, this is our agreement, you need to send me my cut?
Yeah, that's another big reason why I use attorneys, is because the attorney kind of acts as you can look at them as kind of an escrow account, because if the attorney files the claim for you, and they should put in their claim that they request the funds to be paid out to and sent to their office. If an attorney has asked the entity holding the funds to send the check to the client, that attorney is not very smart. I haven't had that happen. And so again, it's very important to use attorneys, because they will receive the funds. And then if the check is made out to the client, they have that ability to deposit that check into their trust account and disperse it accordingly. If you choose to not follow the recommendation of working with attorney, which people have done that. This just happened last week. One of my students got a check made out to the client, and he's like, how do I get this cashed? Well, you should have used an attorney, but number 1, if you've got a power of attorney, then you'll sign your name as POA and see if the bank will deposit it for you. Preferably use a mobile deposit in that situation. So there's your golden nugget for you guys, if you ever get a check in the claimant's name. And if the check goes to the client, hope that you had a good rapport in the beginning and that they send you your money. And if they don't, you can always take it to small claims court, enforce your contract, but at that point in time, it's like, okay, is the cost of enforcing my contract going to be less than what I'm going to receive if I win? So, I did just, this did happen to me recently where we were working a tax sale overage. It was a partner deal, and my partner, he said he did the due diligence, but it turns out he didn't, and he didn't realize that there was a 50 something $1,000 lien, and there was like $57,000 or $56,000 overage. So this lien wiped out the entire thing, but there was still money left over, and we had to apply for the money through the state. This was in Idaho, and in Idaho, for tax sale overages, they'll send the money to the state. So you have to go through them. And I hate dealing with states. They're slow. They'll make you jump through as many hoops as possible. And they're just very difficult to deal with. And long story short, we finally got our claim approved, and they did send the check out to the client. The check had the client's name and my company name. So if they had sent it to me, I would have been able to cash it, no problem. Because the client called me and was like, hey, your company name's on here. Can I cash this? I was like, well, is your name on it? She's like, yes. I was like, well, go cash it. But by that time, it was like, it was only $2,700 total that we got. And I just didn't even care at that point. I was like, take the money. If you want to send some to, my partner, send him his cut. I don't want anything. I'm just glad that this deal is over. So that is the one time where the check got sent to the client, but it was a deal that it was just a pain in the butt for me. So, but I've had students where they've, in rare instances where the check has been mailed to the client, and the client has sent them their portion. And that's just a testament to them creating that goodwill in the beginning and that trust on those initial conversations. But I would avoid that altogether by using an attorney.
Yeah, for sure.
Aileen, very rarely do I use powers of attorney because I'm using an attorney. It's not really necessary for me to get a POA if I'm using an attorney. But I mean, if you're not using an attorney, then you should probably get a POA. But I very rarely use them. And that's because I have an attorney submit my deals.
Why would anybody, what's a situation when you should use a power of attorney as opposed to just an attorney from the get-go? I don't understand why anybody would just use a power of attorney.
Right. There are some agencies, they will request that. I mean, again, it's really only if you're trying to do it on your own, which I don't recommend. But for example, some state agencies, if for whatever reason the overage has gone to the state, they may require a power of attorney from you. But that really is the only reason you would need a POA, is if you don't use an attorney. Now, why would someone not use an attorney? Ego, because they think they can do it better. They're cheap, maybe, well, not cheap, but they think they don't understand that they don't have to pay up front for the costs. So lack of knowledge is another one of why you wouldn't use an attorney. Those are the main reasons that I can think of why you wouldn't. Or if it's just so dead simple, like if the county spells out exactly what you need on their website, then maybe you don't need an attorney. And California tax overages is an example of that. If you just read through their stuff, they tell you exactly what they want from you. They don't really want POAs in California. They use a specific assignment form for tax overages. But that may be the other reason you don't use an attorney. as if it's just dead simple. Awesome. Very cool, very cool. Yeah, might as well go an hour. We'll take one last question if there is any. Water. Nothing. All right, cool. Well, hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you kind of answered some questions, about the business in general, and kind of the things that are available to you in the course and all that good stuff. I did post that link to that gold program if you're interested in checking that out. Feel free to check that out. And then I appreciate you guys, taking time out of your day. I apologize. We went out. I wasn't expecting to go an hour. I was expecting to go maybe, 30 minutes, but, I hope I was able to get some questions answered for you guys. Feel free to, I will leave a link in the chat. Okay. So, that if you have any other questions, guys, you can see the entire curriculum of the course so that you can see what's included in the course before you purchase it. Highly recommend you do that. So there's a link in the chat to go check that out, where you can check out the entire curriculum of the course, what's included, and any other questions you may have. And then I appreciate you taking the time. So if you use that link, to sign up for the course, you'll get $250 off just for taking the time out of your day to be here. So appreciate you guys. Hope that helped, and have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. We'll see you later.